Hello, everyone. Welcome to Celsius 233, your go-to place for fiction book summaries. Today, we will explore The Depths of the Gambler by Fyodor Dostoevsky. The Gambler by Fyodor Dostoevsky, published in 1867, is a psychological exploration of obsession, particularly the destructive lure of gambling. Dostoevsky wrote the novella as a reflection on his own struggles with gambling addiction and financial desperation. The story is set in the fictional town of Roulettenberg and centers around the narrator, Alexei Ivanovich, who works as a tutor for a Russian general's family. As Alex navigates the tumultuous relationships within the family, he becomes entangled in both romantic and financial crises, leading him to the roulette table. Plot summary. The sun was sinking behind the grand hotels of Roulettenberg when Alexei Ivanovich, a tutor in the service of a fallen Russian general, returned from a short leave of absence. As he stepped into the hotel, he could immediately sense that something had changed. The general, once a proud man, greeted him coldly and dismissed him. Even Polina Alexandrovna, the woman who held Alexei's heart captive, barely acknowledged his return. Money, it seemed, had appeared from somewhere, temporarily easing the tension that had hovered over the household like a storm cloud. But for how long? Alexei had been employed by the general for some time, a position that allowed him a small salary but no real place in the family's intricate social games. The general, beset by debts, was waiting anxiously for the death of his wealthy aunt, the much-discussed Babulenka, whose fortune he desperately needed to restore his standing. Every day, the family lingered on the edge of ruin, sustained by the hope that Babulenka's death would provide them the salvation they craved. As days passed, Alexei became increasingly aware of Polina's own desperation. Polina was the stepdaughter of the general, and though outwardly cold, she harbored deep complexities. Alexei's infatuation with her was as irrational as it was intense. Polina, however, treated him with an indifference that bordered on cruelty, yet she kept him close, as if knowing that she could manipulate his devotion whenever she pleased. One evening, as the family dined with Emil, Blanche, a glamorous Frenchwoman who had been pursuing the general, Polina confided in Alexei her own urgent need for money. She handed him a sum of money, ordering him to take it to the roulette tables and win for her. For a moment, Alexei hesitated. He had gambled before, but this time it felt different. Playing for himself had always been thrilling, but playing for Polina, for someone else, left him conflicted. Yet, as always, he could not refuse her. The casino was a whirl of colors, sounds, and anticipation. Alexei's first few spins of the wheel yielded nothing. The crowd around the table seemed to press in on him, the clatter of chips and the voices around him became a single oppressive hum. But just as he was on the brink of giving up, fortune smiled. Red, black, even numbers. He won again and again until the pile of coins in front of him grew large enough to attract envious glances from the crowd. Clutching his winnings, Alexei returned to Polina, flushed with triumph, only to find her as distant as ever. She accepted the money without a word, leaving him to wonder what new schemes she was plotting. As Alexei watched Polina from a distance, he became more entangled in the strange dynamics of the household. The general, completely smitten with Emil, Blanche was blind to the looming disaster. He believed that once his aunt died, her fortune would allow him to marry Blanche and restore his pride. But day after day, no telegram arrived from St. Petersburg. The family was on edge, and the general's mounting debts to the Marquis de Gria, another Frenchman entwined in their affairs, grew more pressing. One evening, Babulenka herself arrived in Roulettenberg. To the shock of everyone, the elderly woman, far from being at death's door, was full of life and fiery spirit. Rather than handing over her fortune, she became a fixture at the casino, gambling with reckless abandon. Each night, she would take a seat at the roulette table, placing large bets with casual disregard for the consequences. The general's plans crumbled before his eyes as Babulenka squandered her money on the wheel. His hopes of an inheritance vanished with each turn of the wheel, and his love for Blanche, now based on nothing more than delusion, became a source of ridicule. Alexei, meanwhile, could not tear himself away from the casino either. At first, his gambling seemed like a means to an end, a way to win Polina's favor or to assert control over his chaotic life. But as the nights went on, gambling became an obsession. His mind was constantly filled with thoughts of winning, losing, and the fleeting thrill of staking everything on a single spin. Yet, with every victory came an even greater loss. The same reckless abandon that drove Babulenka had begun to consume him as well. Mr. Astley, an Englishman who had been a quiet observer of the family's decline, warned Alexei that gambling would ruin him. Astley had always been a friend to Alexei, though Alexei knew that he was also in love with Polina. Unlike Alexei, Astley's love was quiet, dignified, and respectful, a stark contrast to Alexei's feverish passion. Still, Alexei could not heed his friend's warnings. The pull of the roulette wheel and the fleeting hope that he could somehow win everything back was too strong. As the family's situation spiraled further out of control, Polina made one last demand of Alexei. She wanted more money, enough to free herself from the debts she owed to the Marquis de Gria. In one final act of desperation, Alexei returned to the tables. This time, the outcome was different. His luck had run out, and he lost everything. When he returned to Polina empty-handed, she finally opened up to him. Her despair was palpable, and Alexei realized that she had been using him all along. Though she too had been trapped by circumstance, her manipulation of his feelings left him shattered. In the end, the general's affair with Emil Blanche ended in farce. With no fortune to offer, the Frenchwoman left him, moving on to another wealthy suitor. Babulenka returned to Russia, her wealth greatly diminished and the family scattered. Alexei, abandoned by Polina and consumed by his addiction, was left to wander Europe, forever chasing the elusive fortune that roulette had promised but never delivered. In a final meeting with Mr. Astley, Alexei reflected on his choices. He had gambled away not only his money, but also his dignity and his future. Yet, even in the depths of his despair, he could not escape the lure of the wheel. The addiction had taken root, and he knew that he was powerless to resist it. That's it for now. If you enjoyed this, check out other books by Fyodor Dostoevsky. You'll find them in the description or just search for them on Celsius 233. Remember, while our summaries capture the essence, they can never replace the full experience of reading the book. If this summary intrigued you, consider diving into the complete story, buy the book, and immerse yourself in Fyodor Dostoevsky's original work. Bye-bye, take care, have fun.